All right, we are going to call this special board meeting of December 19th, 2023 to order at 5:30 p.m. Can I get roll call, please?
This is present.
Costa here. Costa here. Bolger here.
Brianna Texody here. I would like to start the meeting with letting everybody know how much we appreciate staff and families coming in on their winter break. It was not an easy decision and we did everything that we could to not have to come in on winter break, but I do want you all to know that we definitely really appreciate you all coming in and making this happen. We are going to move on to 1C. Recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the agenda for the organizational board meeting of December 19th, 2023. Can I get a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Any changes?
Yes, respectfully requesting an addendum under organization of Board of Trustees. We have section 3, addendum to be listed prior to item 3I. 3H should be selection of board representative to LACSA, which is LA County School Trustees Association.
Okay, so that will be prior to H or
So-
after H.
So the resolution for certification of signatures will now be I, if approved, and H would be LACSA.
It's updated on the website.
Just want to make sure that we have that as an addendum because that wasn't posted 72 hours.
With those changes, call for question, any other discussion? Call for question, all in favor?
This is that.
Aye. That's better. Bolger, aye.
Brianna Texoni, aye. To a flag salute. Please rise. Right hand over your heart, ready to begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's up there. If that helps. To be civility statement, Aislinn will be reading our civility statement.
The civility statement: communicate clearly and concisely with respect for the time of others. Listen objectively, carefully considering the opinions of others. Understand the counterproductive effects of disruptive, demeaning, and intimidating behaviors. Understand and respect district policies and procedures. Maintain respect for the rich history of the district and the effort of those of others who have served in the past.
Thank you so much. All right, here we go. 3, organization of the Board of Trustees. We're going to start with 3A, Office of the President. Call for nominations of the Office of the President of the Board of Trustees.
I nominate Brianna Texoni to remain president. You not read public comment first?
That is after. There's a nomination for myself to be president. Is there a second? Hearing no second, that dies on the vine. And I will go ahead and make another nomination. And I make this nomination because I feel strongly about the history of our rotation of our board. So due to that and my respect for Ken Falsgraf, I would like to nominate Ken for the office of president.
A second.
I
would accept that nomination.
Okay, call for question. All in favor of the motion to appoint Ken as president of the office of president of the Board of Trustees?
This is that.
Nay. Mascot, aye.
Paul Giamatti, aye.
Brianna Texel, aye. I just would like to say thank you, Tom, for your nomination. That means a lot to me. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I think you've done a heck of a job.
Thank you.
That's, we want you to roll into the position, so.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you. So after that, I will, that's it.
Thank you for a wonderful job, Mr. Yeah.
Moving on to item B, Office of Vice President. It will be my honor to nominate Lester Mascon as the Vice President.
I would like to second that.
I accept your nomination.
Call the question.
Jesus, second.
Aye.
Brianna Texel, aye.
Paul Giamatti, aye. Office of the Clerk, it will be my honor to nominate Mr. Tom Costin as the Clerk of the Board.
I'll second.
Call the question.
Jesus, aye.
Aye. Mascot.
Brianna Texel, aye.
Paul Giamatti, aye. D, appointment of secretary to the Board of Trustees. I'll make a motion that Dr. Eric Sahakian, Superintendent, continues to act as the secretary to the Board of Trustees.
I'll second.
Call the question.
Jesus, second.
Aye. Mascot, aye.
Brianna Texel, aye.
Paul Giamatti, aye. E, selection of representatives to Antelope Valley School Boards Association. I'm gonna take the liberty of asking, someone to do this based on their past presidency. I would like to ask, past President Taxoni to accept, this role. If it's good for you, great. If not, great.
I would love to. Thank you.
Second on that,
Second.
call the question.
Jesus, second.
Aye. Mascot.
Brianna Texel, aye.
Paul Giamatti, aye. The next one, is a selection of representative to California School Boards Association Legislative Network. You'd be contacted, sometimes, to participate in votes or setting policies. I'll take the liberty, based on your experience with, liaison work with communities, I would, ask Tom to consider that role. California School Boards Association District Representative.
I appreciate that, Ken, but I think my time schedule is going to prevent me from doing that, so I suggest, Dr. Jesus stays this. Yeah, sure, I don't mind.
I would second that. Call the question.
Jesus, second.
Aye. Mascot.
Brianna Texel, aye.
Paul Giamatti, aye. G, selection of representative Los Angeles County Committee on School District Organization. It's not Laxton, correct? Could you explain this role?
Yes, not a problem. So Lake Hills County Committee, a school district organization, is an independent body of 11 panel members elected to the body that makes recommendations to school board members in the areas of certain components forming districts, transferring territory among school districts, and the like. So it's a representative to get information from the Waco Committee on School District Organization.
Past President Taxoni, could you entertain us with a recommendation on who you might think might be best for that role, even if it's yourself?
Does this role require like going to the LACO meetings and doing that, or is it just communication through emails and?
The latter, and correspondence through mail as well as email.
In my time on the board, I have never heard of anyone attending a meeting in person.
I can make time for that.
I would like to nominate Tom for that position.
I'll second that. Call the question.
Jesus, aye.
Aye. Johnson.
Brianna Texani, aye.
Paul Scott, aye. So that's it. Thank you, everyone.
We have two more next.
Two more.
H.
Certification of signatures.
No,
Okay,
it's the board representative of Los Angeles County School Trust Association, which I would like to nominate against both.
So first off, I filled that role for 2 consecutive years. Short of most of those meetings are online and you get different how do I be politically correct about this? Some of the things you'll hear represent the downtown area or the different things, and they don't always represent the rural district stuff that we do. So that said, I navigate that okay. I don't have aspirations to become anything in that. I'd like to open it up for discussion about one of you others having an opportunity. We're all looking.
Lester. I would like to nominate Lester for that position.
Great, I'll second that. Will you accept that?
Yes, sir.
Good. Paul's question?
Jesus, aye.
Johnson, aye. That's good.
Brianna Texani, aye.
Well, I'm letting some of this soak in because it'll get you sooner or later. Oh, what did I just do? Okay, so this is, okay, so that said, before I move into this, I want to thank all of you for your time commitments. I know that this commitment here is one thing. The clerk job, I will say, is probably the most important job in the district because you are going to sign every contract, you're going to sign everything, including DSA approvals on stuff that's done. So it's just, you'll notice that Yolanda will come to you every time. I'm glad you're sitting in there. I think your experience at the Acton Town Council will be particularly apropos here. Lester, you've done a great deal of work on policy and procedure. I know that things are like that. It is a pleasure to have you down there, sir. You are a model of behavior. Brianna, I'm going to take the liberty of saying this right now. I've said this 100 times, that when you want to sit on the school board, you know, it's nice to be popular, it's, you know, all that, everybody comes to you solving their problems, and sooner or later you learn not to do that. But when we step into that room back there, things get scary, and there are times when you are making decisions that you know is going to affect someone's life long term. And you've got a lawyer telling you, here's a law, boom, boom, boom. And it's kind of like a police officer pulling up on somebody and realizing this is just a dumb kid that made a mistake and I need to do what I can. You know what I'm talking about. And not just letter of the law, boom, you go downtown. If I would characterize the one thing that's been most important to me about your service, the public would never know, and file a Brown Act violation against me right now. But when it comes time to consider the underdog, the kid that needs another chance, the circumstances, how widespread they are, what the social answer might be instead of what the lawyer says. Brianna is always there to remind you of your responsibility to consider not only what the law says, but the ethics of the decision you're making. I have not seen her not go to bat for all kinds of different people and get us to consider all sides of the view. And if there's anybody that's been semi-successful in softening me up, it's Brianna Taxoni. It has been my pleasure to serve under you as your vice president. Now go down there.
I appreciate that, and that means a lot, because that is absolutely where my heart is at. And I will say, as you being the vice president, there were a lot of times that I reached out to Ken and asked for advice, and what would Ken do, and what procedure, what's law, where would you go from here? And the guidance that I got as a president from the vice president, I would not have been able to do that side of it without you sitting in this seat. So I very much appreciate all of your help that you've given me.
Thank you. That's a lot of rules and, following process. So your role is
Thank
much bigger. And I would ask that as we all move down one seat and the immediate past president takes replaces the first voice on the board when we discuss issues. That is such an important thing, to have the person who is immediate past president down there frame the conversation. You all are going to see a different Ken, and Ken is the board president. I run the business. I support the superintendent. These 4 positions make the decisions. I don't like hanging votes. I'm not here to exercise anything other than to develop the consensus of my board. You will find, if I think that there is something that's not gelling, where we're going to have 2-2 votes, expect that I will ask the superintendent if this has been considered or not. I don't expect everybody to vote yes all the time and have 5 people, rubber stamping things, and there is individuality. But my role is to support the superintendent and to establish consensus on this board, and that comes with decision making of those 4 people. So please join me as your past president, going down to the hand there by giving a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I am very excited to be down here.
Give us time to think about what you're going to say.
Never excited. Excited to see those 2. They start today, so.
That's exciting.
Oh, hello. No, I'm gonna change that. No, that's okay. He does not mess around. Season.
Up there.
Oh, good.
I will get down.
What did you do? Like Chris Shank.
You could take care of it.
I need a level opener. Letter opener. Letter opener. All right, thank you.
Okay, I have some notes in 1 minute, so.
I have to explain your flight to get here, so she can get to her office. Look at this. Make it happen.
What happened?
Gotta be smart with that.
Did you do that?
Here we go. Item I, resolution 2023-2413, certification of signature.
A motion.
I'll second.
This is an action item that we approve, the signatures that we will, provide for Yolanda after the meeting. It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Call the question?
Brianna Texoni, aye.
Jesus, aye.
I, Matt Stover.
Paul's draft, aye. Item 4, public participation and comments. Can we move this to the? Is there an instruction like Dummy's Guide to Public Comments? I haven't read this in a while. There's something about not bashing people and that type of thing. The public has the right to comment on any items. Oh, that's closed session. Public comments before we go to closed session, let's do that. I have a public comment from Tracy Costan regarding the election.
Tracy Costin. I'm here as a parent and a longtime community member. Volunteer for 15 years since my mental health days. I'm winding down my 15 years in a few months. So I'm here speaking on my behalf, not the newspaper today. I want to say to Brianna, thank you for your service. In the last few months, I really think you really got into your position well. I saw you speak out more, and I believe that a president needs more than one term in order to fulfill the presidency. And we read the civility statement like we do at every meeting. And I just hope that everyone will follow them. And I hope that when you have an important vote, you don't walk away from your duty. And I hope I don't keep on saying things on social media about myself or innuendos. So, with that being said, I also hope you understand that in public comment, the person can say anything they want about anybody as long as they are not threatening that person. So you cannot shut people down. So I just want to say, Brianna, thank you. And I'm very disappointed in most of you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. So we will now go to closed session where we may discuss conference with labor negotiators, public employee discussion, discipline, dismissal, and release, conference with legal counsel, or student matters. Do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Call the question?
Are you gonna text on me?
Yes, exactly. I. That's not right.
Paul, aye. We will adjourn to closed session at 5:58. Yes. Thank you. 6:26 PM. And I will make a report of action taken in closed session. The Board of Trustees has unanimously agreed to staff's recommendation for stipulated student expulsion for student number 2002021. Again, that was unanimous agreement with the board with staff recommendation. I would ask the board to entertain me on this recommendation, seek a second. I would like to see us put the board member comments to the end of the meeting, each meeting. We carry on with the student comment, the superintendent's comment. We'll put the board member comments to the end of the meeting where people who have business to do can go home, watch, do whatever, it's on tape, so there's no effect per se, but the board member comments would drop into the agenda before adjournment, before future agenda items, and before the calendar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Call the question.
Brianna Texoni, aye.
Jason Center. Aye. Mascot.
Falls Grab, aye, thank you very much. Hazel, we'll be pleased to hear from you now.
Are we on?
Off time out. There's something going on with each of this here. Where are we? 6A. Now I understand why Brianna was nominated. 6A. Wonderful. 6A is student representative to the board. Their participation.
I believe this is what we spoke about.
Brianna, could you give us the liberty of introducing them, please?
I will.
This is, hang on just a minute, this is an initiative of immediate past president Taxoni. Thank you, Brianna, go ahead.
Thank you. It's something that I'm actually really excited about. Our student representative to the board, let me back up. I went to the California School Board Association Annual Education Conference, where I get to sit in a multitude of different lessons and hear from different expert board members and some really intelligent, awesome people that explain different parts of our ed code in different ways that school board members or school boards do things. One of the lessons that I sat in was student board member rights. Our student board member has rights under ed code 35012. Those rights, they are allowed to cast a preferential vote. So meaning every time that we vote, we don't start with this seat, we will start with our student representative. And that doesn't go into the vote. She can't cause a tie. It's a preferential vote. So she's going to let us know through her vote every single time we vote on something, what her preference would be. And then the board casts their official vote. Every time we have a discussion, she gets to start our discussion. And I did have this conversation with Aislinn last week. She doesn't have to have a discussion. She can say like us, oh, I don't have anything to say. But when she has something to say it. I welcome it and we all welcome it. And I'm very excited. I know you have a lot to say, so I'm very excited to hear that. She is to receive any material that the board receives that's not confidential. So she's not going to receive student matters, but anything that the board receives, she's to be treated like an equal to the school board and like a colleague to us. So anytime that we receive information, Aislinn is to receive that as well. Any invitations that the school board receives, invitations to ASMO, invitations to, anything going on in the district or the community, Aislinn is to receive invitations as well, so that she can be our colleague and attend alongside us. So I'm very excited for that as well. So I just want to make sure that Aislinn and every student representative in the future is definitely taking a more active role in fulfilling their rights as a school board. And this isn't something that we're allowing you to do. This is something that you have a right to do. So I'm very excited about that. Also, I don't ever want you to feel from anybody, from us, from staff, that you have to run your presentation through somebody and be censored from somebody, either the school board or staff on campus at all. You are here, you were voted here by your peers for a reason, because they trust you. We trust you. We trust you that you're not gonna come and slander somebody. You're trusted to make those decisions, and I don't want you to ever feel like you have to run your presentation through somebody else. That is nowhere in ed code that you have to do that. It's nowhere written down that you have to be censored by anybody. So please don't ever feel like you're censored by anybody. And if you feel strongly about something, I feel strongly that you will be able to bring it to the board in your classy demeanor that you always bring. And I just want you to know that we look forward to hearing that every school board meeting. So those are some things that I learned about our school board members' rights. So I just wanted to change our meetings and include her more. So that's why I asked for that to be put on the board meeting, the board minutes.
Let's open this up for discussion and order. Aislinn, please.
Thank you, yeah. I'm really excited for this new opportunity for not only myself, but all future student representatives. I think it's a big change that I think a lot of people will really appreciate. Thank you for going out of your way to gather all this information and give me this opportunity. And thank you for the board members for, having to now put up and listen to me. But that's okay, because now I have the short end of the stick. Speaking for us. So excited, thank you.
You like how I passed that? I don't have to say it first. Yeah, I've said enough, so I don't.
Yeah, it is your turn to speak. Anything, Brianna? George?
Well, thank you, Brianna, for actually bringing that to our attention. I think it's great changes. Like, I look forward to hearing your input and all the good stuff you have to say.
So every student representative sits there, I always say, look at our bylaws. And I told you the same thing, and I'm gonna put you on the spot. Did you look at the bylaws?
Yes, I did.
So the bylaws are not ed code, but they're the rules that we follow. And the ed code obviously supersedes our bylaws, anything in ed code. So I'm gonna suggest that since our bylaws are a little weak in this subject, although they do explain that you are an equal board member that cannot vote, or you have a little bit more rights than that. I'm going to suggest, Mr. President, that we put the bylaws up for review in this section, that we get them up to speed with the ed code and clarify some of the roles of the student representative.
That comment was taken, or can you wrap up your comments?
That's it.
Lester?
I think it's fantastic. Thank you for doing that. Aislinn, super looking forward to everything, all of your input. Yeah, it's exciting. Well then, it's good.
Brianna contacted me in December about this after she returned from the California School Boards Association, went to a couple of training sessions. It had been brought up before, so everybody fight over who takes credit for it is meaningless. Thank you for being here. Staff, I'm not a proponent of the board telling you how to run your agenda. I think you heard a strong suggestion from your clerk, and I would take that home, take that discussion offline and figure out when it needs to be agendized if that's what you choose to do. I have no comments, but congratulations. You continue to serve us well. I've noticed that your reports, you try to incorporate all of the campuses and all of the students, top to bottom. To Lester's vision, you start when you're a little kid and you walk the stage with a plan as an adult. And you setting the model for this role, there have been excellent student reps before that. My advice to you is to kind of keep that in your mind. How do you show the kids that we're actually up here talking about where they're going? We're disassociated old people and we represent a hope to them. So thank you. Any more? I always have to cycle around just in case people get rowdy. Nothing. Good. 7, business. First interim report for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Superintendent, staff.
Thank you. Before I turn it over to Mr. Bensko, the first interim reports are compared to adopted budgets. And this first interim period of time covers July 1st through October 31st. And Mr. Bensko has been working on this presentation for our trustees as well as our district meeting. So, Mr. Bensko. All right.
I'll just, if you don't mind. Yeah. So, good evening, board members. I will keep this fairly brief, but so tonight we'll be presenting on the 2023-2024 first interim report. If you want to go to the next slide. Tonight we're going to go through the budget cycle. We'll go through what planning factors or assumptions that I used for the first interim. We'll talk about what has changed from adopted to first interim, and then look at them by the numbers. Move on to our multi-year projections, and finish with next steps and considerations, and then finally take questions from the board. Report budget cycle. So this is the second budget report for the fiscal year. As mentioned by Dr. Sahakian, the actuals that we use is through October 31st. We typically during this cycle, we bring in over carryovers that were from prior year. We will update our enrollment projections for actuals that we've received through the year. We'll update our staffing projections based on what has happened over the summer. As you remember, we built adopted budget back in May. So now we have approximately 5 months worth of data that we didn't have back then. So we are on our second report. So moving forward, if you don't mind. So planning factors. So we build our first interim reports or any budget report based on a set of data, and it's usually good. This data is old already, right? So our planning factors are always changing. But I wanted to give the board a look at what we use to build this budget. So in the orange columns, you'll see what we are using. So the nice thing is we have enrollment is up about 24 students from where we had projected it in May. And then I carried that forward flat throughout the year. Our actual ADA, we're seeing about a 1% increase in attendance from this period as compared to last year. So I've also updated that ADA for attendance rate. One important thing to know why attendance is important. 1% of ADA equals about $125,000 of funding. Not to mention the student loss of education, but funding resources. We're losing about $125,000 for every percent that we are not at 100. The next piece is our COLA. So where I highlighted, this year's COLA is still funded at 8.22%. And we usually use the School Services of California dartboard to project out year COLAs for the LCFF funding. So what you see there, the 3.94 and the 3.29 is what was projected back in May. However, we've known that the state has gone through some pretty dire tax receipts and the economy is not looking so great. We've seen in the news, there's about a $68 billion deficit for the state. And so that 3.94% and 3.29% are now looking more like 1.27 and 1.3. So I will talk about how that will be affected later on by numbers, so I just want to point that out. And then average unduplicated count, as we've been That's another piece of our funding. You can actually see we're increasing in that because we're collecting our alternative forms and those this generates a little bit extra funding. So we go on to the other side of the coin, which is the expenditure planning factors. I'm not gonna go through this too much. There really hasn't been much change from May to now. The only two pieces are the PERS rates, actually have increased by about 0.5% each. This is the employer contribution rate. So that is reflected in our out years. And then you can see our certificated, classified, and management confidential FTE. Again, no cuts are projected as you see. We're keeping things flat, assuming that our enrollment stays flat. All right. So, and then before I go into the numbers, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll go through the major changes. So on the revenue side, as I mentioned, our ADA and our enrollment is up. So that is contributing to about $414,000 of additional revenue. On the federal side, we have about $720,000 increase. Again, as I mentioned, this is the time that we budget our carryovers from prior year. You recognize the revenue, and then you can see that on the other side, there's an equal or similar increase in expenditures. State revenues are also up about $740,000, and there is a factor of about 4 different one-time funding that is contributing to that. And then on our local revenues, we've actually increased about $500,000 due to an increase in interest revenue. As you might know, if you're getting interest at your bank, you're getting a lot more interest in the money on your bank. So likewise, the school districts get to partake in that as well. So, and then there's also prior year rental from the Acton Agua Dulce Elementary School that was not recognized last year, since it was a new agreement that was first year was last year. So it was a delay in that recognition. So there's that. Expenditures, we have an increase of about $1 million, and that's due to budgeting positions that we did not have necessarily thought of during the year. So we have 2 TOSAs, partially due to the reorg and the backup TOSA. We have an additional SEC teacher, and then budgeting half years for a coordinator of HR and our potential BHS principal position. And on the classified side, we have 2 social workers and 4 FTE of instructional aides. The 2 social workers are a part of that mental health grant that we are applying. I have not found them yet, but they're still there, so they get budgeted for about half of the remaining year. And then benefits will move along with the salaries. As you increase salaries, you increase benefits. Finally, books and supplies, again, they increased about $500,000, again, partially due to carryovers and then going through actuals to date. And then services, also the same type of thing. We have our ELOP services because we had an increase in ELOP revenue. The subsequent, on the other flip side of the coin, the expenditures have also been budgeted to go up. And then actual POs to date for services like SPED contracts or any services that are done via maintenance, et cetera. One piece about this that I just want to mention is, and you'll kind of see this as we go to the next slide, is that, and you can go to the next slide, that's fine. You'll notice that most of the differences from adopted to first are on the restricted side. And why that's important is that our unrestricted side is where we have more control over. The district can spend money how the board and how the staff see fit, whereas restricted, they're set by each of those programs, right? So those have specific type of rules, they have different expenditure rules. So having said that, we're looking in the right direction in terms of our going to a more balanced budget. We're actually to the good about $182,000 net change on the unrestricted side. And then our net change on the restricted side for this year is only about $77,000 for that. Okay, so that's this current year, but part of the budget process is to provide a multi-year projection outlook. And part of that is to determine what type of certification we give our report. You have 3 different types of certifications. You have positive, qualified, and negative. Positive being that the district can meet its financial obligations for the current and 2 subsequent year. And that is what the multi-year projection allows us to look. So if you want to move to the multi-year projection, you will see that we do in fact meet our financial obligations. And by meeting financial obligations to the state, that only means we meet the minimum required reserve, which is the 3% or 4%, depending on your ADA as a district. We do meet that and well exceed that, and you'll see on the next slide. But what I do want to point out in these two slides, so again, I break this down by unrestricted to restricted. As I mentioned, on the out years in 24, 25, and 25, 26, I am using that higher COLA to project our revenue. So as you can see, as we move forward, we're getting close to a balanced budget, which is great. However, when, as I mentioned, we'll be seeing that COLA drop potentially from the January budget, and that can have some, that'll have an effect on our revenues and potentially what our net change in unrestricted or restricted side of the house. So moving on to the next slide, this will show up combined, and I'll show you where I have kind of, what I've done is I've assigned those dollars that we see as losing funds. So as I mentioned, that's about a 3% drop in the COLA, which equates to about $360,000 loss of unrestricted revenue. And then in the out year, it kind of compounds, right? So you're gonna see that $360,000 continue to next year, and then also you're gonna lose funding because the second year out year COLA is now 1.3%. So these are just to show what the effects are, and Waco has given guidance that said, use what the dartboard and what the school services in California and what the major organizations have out that are already published, but keep in mind, and they recommended you do an assignment to show not only the board, but the public to see what effects what it would look like on our revenue. As you can see, even with those, assigned dollars, we're still at a pretty healthy reserve. But again, the reserve is only one-time funding. So we just have to make sure that we are frugal and make sure that we know and plan for these types of potential blips or longer. And then finally, so as I mentioned, we're positive, meeting our minimum 3% reserve. And then, so what's going to happen next? So we'll finally get an official COLA projection for next year, next one, at the January governor's proposed budget. Usually comes out with that around the 10th or so of January. And this will talk about whatever revenue projections that they see for Prop 98, which is what we fund with school districts. Maybe he will cut current programs at the state level. We won't really know. He's been kind of tight-chested on what he might cut or not. What sort of budget cuts that he might propose, we're not sure yet, but that will come out in January, which we will then incorporate into our second interim report in March. Again, we always update, for our second interim, we will update our salaries and benefits. We continue to monitor enrollment and attendance closely because that will affect our next year our next year staffing needs. But overall, I want to point out is, will this downturn in the state economy be a blip or will it be something longer? We won't know really until probably April because of the delay in tax revenues this year. We should know in April of next year how this current year has gone. So with that, I thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Hazel, let's start the discussion with you.
No discussion, thank you.
Brianna.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for putting this together and coming in on winter break.
George.
No questions. Thank you. Thanks.
Tom.
The ADA, obviously it's significant, the 1% change makes a lot of difference. Where are we, and this question isn't actually really budget exactly, but what do we look like at other districts? Are we doing well or are we not doing well in terms of how the community around us is doing?
Sure. So I can't speak to the districts necessarily around us. I haven't looked at their ADA rate, but I will say statewide, between pre-pandemic to now, almost every district has lost about 5% in ADA percentage. Where I was from in Newhall, we were at about 96.5, and they dropped down to about 91.5, 92. So it's not just here. We're actually I think the averages used to be like 97 for elementary, 96 for middle, and then for unifieds like ourselves was like 94, 95. Was like a kind of a target rate to hit. So you can see we're, overall we're down 5% because we used to be up at that 95 or 94%. So
We have some work to do there.
absolutely.
Thank you for putting it all together, always professionally, presented as usual. Couple questions. Following on the ADH trend, is that usually higher in the first part of the year and then drops off and balances to something else?
Typically, yeah. So you gotta go through about the first half of the year and it kind of goes up and then you hit December and it kind of goes down and then you kind of, it's like a valley. That's kind of the typical, but I use the same year over year, like for the same period to kind of adjust my trend, so to speak. So I'm hoping I was a little conservative with it, just knowing that the next half of the year could really show us what's happening, but all that.
I would like to add, I want to go ahead and really commend our principals at 3 sites for the attendance recovery efforts. I know that's been one of the 3 priorities on campus. So thank you, Ms. Van Ornum, Mrs. Jones, and Dr. Chamberlain. I know Dr. Chamberlain, Ed Services Director, we've identified the need for second semester, especially around spring break. And so that's going to be a focus for our principal meeting starting in January.
I always appreciate your focus on the numbers. I know there's people behind all of this, there's kids behind all of it. There's a lot of other people that are focused on that. So good clarity on the numbers, the revenues, costs are very much appreciated. So the book service and supplies increase, that was a big increase. Is that an ongoing or one-time increase?
So usually it's a one-time because of the carryovers of the federal dollars. So they'll get carried over because your revenues have to equal expenditures on federal funding.
Okay.
So usually you kind of, a budgeting term, you budget it there. It may fall into supplies, it may go into services. It just kind of, it might fluctuate, but that's kind of like a placeholder usually.
Not recurring expense.
But it wouldn't be a recurring expense. Like your regular funding, would be the recurring part. The carryover would not, and it would get pulled out in multi-year.
As in previous years, and your predecessors have always forecasted a decline to our reserves. It always ends up turning out the other way. So we're looking forward to finding.
That's
If you and the superintendent finding to turn that into a positive. For me personally, and take this as a recommendation, not a request or instruction, seeing the previous 2 years in a report like that are very valuable, so you can identify trends in a different that may have gone in different directions. So looking at your budget versus how it actually turned out, forecast versus actuals, for the previous 1 year at least, potentially 2 would be nice. Do we have any reserves sitting back for charters, or are there any liabilities sitting out there that we know about?
No, there are none like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Any other exposures that we have that you're reserving for that,
Certainly. Nope.
nothing else sitting out there that's,
Nope.
ghosts in a closet, waiting to jump out at us?
Nope, anything that is pertinent is brought to, I'm not one to hide that, but no, we do not have anything, on the horizon, so to speak. Yes.
Is that it?
That is it.
Is everybody good? My colleagues have covered any questions I would have, and I would like to compliment the superintendent on your ability to have staff empowered to stand up there and interact in a dynamic fashion and not be looking towards each other, nodding yes or no. Your level of expertise and the way you interact comfortably discussing numbers, especially projected numbers 3 years out, and respectfully looking up what the governor may or may not be doing. I appreciate it, Andrew, so thank you very much. This is not an action item, so we'll move ahead now.
It is actually an action item. It has to be
Yes.
accepted or,
Okay.
yes.
We will call the question. Aizen, what do you feel about the recommendation to approve his budget?
Yes,
Wonderful.
Don't we have to motion first? I motion to approve.
Okay, I think we motioned discussion or we did whatever. I'll second it. Call the question, Brianna.
Brianna Texel, aye.
Dennis Susan.
I, that's not bad.
Paul's draft, aye. Good work, Kevin. B, resolution 2324-12, naming district representative for state allocation board. Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
All right, so this is more or less a formality, but the OPSC requires, there are times when they will send out surveys or have reporting that the district must report, like something to the effect of, do you have any unused property or anything like that? And technically, the only people that can respond are those that have been certified by the board as to represent the district. The superintendent is automatically a representative for the district, but it's always good to keep your contact information up to date with the OPSC for any type of reporting, so that way the superintendent isn't the only one that is providing that report. So this is just a resolution to add myself as part of that representative group. And that's all I have.
That's the staff recommendation.
That is correct.
Call the question, Aislinn,
No questions.
moving down the line, please.
Brianna Texel, aye.
Dennis Susan.
I,
That's not bad.
Paul's draft, aye. C, GASB 75 actuarial valuation report as of June 30th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
second.
You can introduce this, please.
Absolutely. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board requires districts to provide evaluation of its retiree health benefits. I'll turn it over to Mr. Metzger to provide the rest of the information.
For sure. So the GASB report, as mentioned, is a requirement. It used to only be every 2 years, but now they've added a second part to it where you now have to do an annual valuation. This really doesn't affect the budget per se as you see it for the SACS report, but what it does show in our audit report. So our financial statements. This is more of a financial type of actuarial rather than actual expenditures that the district hits. This is done by a third party because they have the expertise to do these actuarial studies. They unfortunately are not able to be with us tonight to answer questions. They were scheduled to be here on Thursday, but if you do have any questions, I'd be happy to forward to them to get further clarification. And this item is just to accept that report for the district.
I think there will be a question about what this number means long-term, Aislinn.
No discussion.
Moving down the line, please. Lester, you have it? I do. Uh-oh. What does this number mean? Is this an unfunded liability? Is this what we're talking about?
Yes, sir. This would be technically an unfunded liability set by how actuarially they feel that our other post-employment benefits, such as retiree health benefits. Sorry, I should have been more clear, but yes.
No, good.
But yes, it is technically an unfunded liability, but out here.
Some of us work for governmental agencies, so we know what this means when we're negotiating. When is this? Is this today? Is it estimated? Is it annual? Is it
This is
elective?
This is like a 30-year estimate of the liability. So typically what you will see on your SACS report is the pay-as-you-go model, and that is reflected in object codes 3711 and 3712 of the SACS report. And that typically is for the actual benefits for the retirees of that given year. So that's the only thing that gets put into the SACS reports, but this is the total over the next 30 to, I forget the exact number of years, but it's a long-term projection of if we had to pay for it all right now, this is what we estimate the dollars to be.
So over a 30-year period, you are looking at $1.17 million.
Correct.
I am familiar with agencies that have looked to buy out through actuarial employee long-term health benefits. I've seen people looking to turn people into at-will employees, all those kinds of things. There's nothing in here that suggests any of that. Here's a quick question. It's D. What if I suggested to you that that amount, the unfunded liability, were to be carried through your budget over X number of years? How would you respond to that?
So there is that option within that report. They do give like an estimated amount of like, again, I don't know exactly the number. I didn't memorize that one, but they give you an amount that you would, if almost like as a loan, right? So if you paid this amount and set this amount aside over X number of years, you would be able to have that in your budget. So
Is there a penalty for doing that if you set that money aside and then all of a sudden you need to, all the funding runs out, we have all kinds of, I don't get into detail here, but you have all kinds of people that are being funded by grant funding, all that goes away and suddenly you want to dig into that actual real fund. Is there a penalty?
so it depends on where you fund it, right? There's different methodologies. There's a fund, an irrevocable trust that you could do, in which case then you would not be able to move the funds out of there. But if you just assigned those funds or even committed, the board could take action to pull those potentially out of that particular fund.
So I appreciate you've dealt with me for a number of years when I sat down there. Again, I explained my role will change, but in the next report, could you anticipate reporting out how you would cover that and what the long term of doing that broke down by year would do to your interim reports? Would that be possible?
It's possible, yes.
Yeah, I'd rather that I didn't ask for that. Thank you. Or is there any further discussion?
No.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Call the question.
Cameron, I.
Brianna Texoni, aye.
Dennis Tucci.
Aye.
That's done.
Paul's draft, aye. Thank you. Okay. The agreement with Schools First Credit Union as third-party administrator for tax shelters to add Roth 403B option. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Yeah, so currently the district offers employees the opportunity to set aside funds pre-tax through Schools First from their paychecks to go towards a 403B account. There is currently only a pre-tax option and the Schools First offers a post-tax option. So this is essentially just allowing the district to provide that option to employees. So the district is recommending that the board allow the district to enter into this agreement so that we can offer that to our employees.
Comments?
Done.
Just, why would somebody want to do post-tax as an employee?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a tax professional, but it's essentially, if you think your tax bracket later on in life is going to be higher, you would assume, okay, if I'm gonna make a lot more money later on in life, that you're trying to get your taxes paid now at maybe the lower rate. That's one just general reason, but other than that, each person's individual tax
So it's
scenario,
offered the same, basically.
essentially, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're good, thank you. Call the question.
Cameron, I.
Brianna Texoni, aye.
Dennis Tucci.
Aye. That's correct.
Paul's draft, aye. Thank you, staff. Our calendar is showing that we have a regular board meeting, January 25th, 2024, and a regular board meeting on February 8th, 2024. So we'll be back on the every 2-week cycle. I would imagine that the next board meeting will be a fairly heavy agenda. Is there anyone anticipates that they can't be here that would affect our ability to have a quorum? Thanks, Bob, for that, thank you. Future agenda items. Strategic plan and presentation, that's what we've been waiting for. That is scheduled for the January 25th, 2024 meeting. Is that it for future agenda items? You have to report now.
That is correct. So that would be a first read item for the updated strategic plan. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm going to, at this point, call for an adjournment of the meeting.
But, Mr. Paulsgraf, I have something to add to our future agenda items.
Go ahead.
Dr. Sahakian, you have an attendance initiative, right? What is your attendance initiative called? What? To improve attendance in our district? Does it have a name?
Dr. Chairman, we don't necessarily have a name,
I thought
but
there was a name used a couple months ago.
well, I just call it attendance recovery, but it encompasses. You could call it attendance recovery.
We'll call it the Attendance Recovery Initiative. I would love, because we discussed attendance and declining ADA and all that, I would love to get a report, and it does not have to be at the next meeting. I'm hoping for like March, April, some kind of a report to the board and to the community of what each school is doing to improve attendance and how that's working out, what our attendance numbers were, what we've been doing, where they're at, and what our projections are to do.
Sounds good.
Thank you. We just have the president.
I would suggest that staff has ears and can hear what the request is. I would suggest that after your strategic plan is rolled out, we had a strategic plan before. You'll notice that since Larry King was here, every part of the superintendent's report, those numbers tie directly back to the strategic plan. I would suggest that your superintendent report address the board members' comments. Again, I'm not want to give you direction on how to set your agenda, but if you have people asking for common information, let's open up our ears. Somewhere in the superintendent's report, like whenever you decide to do that is good. And then we'll circle back to past President Taxoni and see that she's satisfied with the results I know you'll give. Anything else? Wonderful. With that, I will call for the adjournment of the meeting at.
Sorry, can we respond to this?
No, you don't.
We moved them. Yeah, but okay.
But there are no comments for a special meeting.
Okay.
Good, good. Wonderful. I will move to adjourn this meeting at, it is 7:08 PM. Is that correct?
Runs a little bit ahead, so we're at something.
Perfect. 7:05.
I'll second.
Call the question?
Kimberly, Brianna, Tiffany, eyes.
I think that's
Paul's draft, aye.